Washington, D.C., when the new speaker took office, they promised that they were going to get control of spending, they were going to make sure that tax cuts and everything remained in place, and they were going to streamline government. Since they've been in office for 4 months, they are about to pass, and in their budget, they had the largest tax increase in the history of this country in the first 4 months. It's about $380-some billion. Now they're covering it up by not saying it's not a tax increase. But what they're doing is they're doing away with the tax cuts that President Bush put in place when he first got in office and Congress passed. And those tax cuts, if they stop them and remove them, it will cost 2.3 million people in Indiana about $2,700 a year. They'll have to pay $2,700 plus each year more than they're paying now in taxes. That's just in Indiana alone. So we really need to illuminate that issue for people across this country. That the liberals in Congress said they were going to do something, and they're doing it all right. They're raising your taxes. In addition to that, they said they were going to control spending. Let me just tell you some of the things they put in the bill that was supposed to deal with our military and making sure that they're well equipped in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and in the Baltics and other places of the world. They put in there an amendment for the shrimp producers. They put in an amendment for $5 million for tropical fish. They put an amendment in there for peanut storage. And it goes on and on and on. They made a Christmas tree out of something that was supposed to be designed to help our veterans and to help our military personnel do their job well. These are the things that we as Republicans need to tell everybody so that we can get control of the Congress back in 2008 and make sure that we do get back on the right track as far as spending and taxes are concerned. I want to tell you that I was one of the founders of the Republican Study Committee. And the Republican Study Committee is a conservative group of congressmen, consists of about 110. There were only 4 of us when we started. And we are the ones that are trying to make sure we cap spending and get the pork out of spending and make sure we keep taxes low. And so I thought you ought to know that because we have a number of congressmen from Indiana that's a part of that, and I'm very proud to be a part of it myself. Now, I want to talk to you about one other thing, and then I'll let you go home. And that is the war. You're reading in the paper that President Bush's numbers are very low. They're down to about 32%. And you're hearing that we ought to get out of there. And you're hearing people like the new Speaker of the House say that we ought to have a timeline and by next April withdraw our troops or redeploy them someplace else. That is a green light to the terrorists. We are in a war against terrorists and terrorism. And we must not back down or make them perceive that we're backing down. She just went overseas to Syria and met with Assad. That's a violation of the Logan Act. She should be prosecuted for that, but she's not going to be. She's sending a mixed signal to a leader of a terrorist state by going over there and violating the Logan Act and sending a mixed signal from our country that the State Department didn't want and our President didn't want. Now she's talking about going over to see Ahmadinejad, the dictator or president of Iran. And they're one of the people that have been pushing and supporting terrorism, not only in the Middle East, but around the world. Now, a lot of people say, well, maybe we should get out of there. Maybe we should pull in. I want to tell you why we shouldn't. The terrorists aren't afraid of dying. When they're this little, 5 years old, they start teaching them that to blow yourself up or kill yourself while dealing with the infidels will get you a free ticket to heaven. You become immortalized immediately. And we have an awful lot of young kids at 5, 6, 7 years old that are singing songs talking about sacrificing themselves for the cause. And we have young men who are driving cars full of dynamite into a crowded place and blowing themselves up. They want to die because they think that's going to immortalize them. Now, when you're fighting somebody like Adolf Hitler and the Germans in World War II, you knew that they wanted to live and they would surrender. But this is an insidious war we're fighting right now. It's a war against people that come out from behind closed doors in the middle of the night. Today in the Green Zone, there was an attack that killed some Americans. Somebody in there that was a supporter and a part of Al-Qaeda or the terrorist network got in there with some explosives and blew up part of the Green Zone. They're trying to drive us out, and if they do, there will be a void created. And the void, make no mistake about it, will be filled by the radicals from Iran, from Al-Qaeda, from the Taliban, from Hezbollah and Hamas, and it'll be a breeding ground for more terrorism throughout the world. Iran is now developing a nuclear capability. They say they have as many as 3,000 sites where they're making uranium capable of becoming a part of a bomb. We can't let that happen. It's a terrorist state, and the people that are in charge will use any form of terrorism to get their will and their views across. They will do it. If you think somebody will blow themselves up in a car with a car bomb, or put plastic explosives around themselves and go into a pizza parlor and blow up a bunch of people, what do you think they do with a nuclear device? And the worst thing about it is, the Soviet Union, before it broke up, was producing suitcase or briefcase nuclear weapons that weighed about 40 to 45 pounds. I've had 2 television shows over the past 10 years where I had Kurt Weldon, who was an expert in this sort of thing. He dealt with a lot of people in the Russian Duma, the legislative branch. And he brought me a mock-up, which we had on television. And you can get a copy of that. In fact, we ought to put that on our website, Rick, so people can see it. And we actually have a mock-up of what a suitcase nuclear device looks like. There were 85 or 86 of them produced by the Soviets. Only about 35 can be accounted for. That means there's about 50 of them floating around. Now, they have to be upgraded with new uranium, enriched uranium, and a new firing device. But there's 50 of them missing. Now, if Iraq or Iran gets the capability to develop a nuclear weapon, which they're working on very hard right now, make no mistake about it, if they got any of those briefcase or suitcase nuclear weapons, they're going to try to perfect it. Can you imagine what would happen if one of those got into the United States? If they put one on Wall Street, it will destroy, completely obliterate 8 square blocks. There will be nothing left, and the radioactive fallout will kill tens of thousands of people. If you put one in Washington, D.C., 2 blocks from the Capitol, we'll all be gone. Same thing's true with the White House. And they are trying to perfect nuclear weapons in Iran today. That's why the President and all of us are trying to put every bit of pressure we can on Iran to stop their nuclear development program. In addition to that, they're working on ICBM technology and intermediate range missile technology. These are things that we need to make sure every American knows about. This is something that they need to know, because they need to know what the stakes are in this fight against the terrorists. And Iran, I'm going to tell you right now, Iran is believing that we're starting to wilt. When the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, goes over there and talks to Assad in Syria, and then says she's going to talk to Ahmadinejad in Iran, she's sending a signal that we're willing to start pulling in our horns.